Listener, welcome to another edition of Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Last week on the program, we had an eye-opening discussion with Dr. Aisha Abdullahi on empowering women and expanding voter access in Nigeria. We talked about the challenges women face in politics, whether diaspora and early voting could increase participation, and what it could take to create a more inclusive electoral process. If you caught that conversation, you know it was packed with important takeaways. But today we are taking a different direction. Let's talk about something that has been on a lot of people's mind: fixing the system. Yes, we've seen some progress, especially with BVAS helping to reduce overvoting. But let's be real. Many Nigerians still don't trust the system. Voter apathy is on the rise, and every election cycle brings new concerns about transparency, manipulation, and fairness. So what's going on? And more importantly, what will it take to truly fix the electoral system? This is a conversation we need to be part of. Don't go away. Aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reform and constitutional amendment, enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reform, and possibly compile and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and INEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PAACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Elections are meant to be the foundation of democracy, a process where the people decide their leaders and the direction of their country. In Nigeria, however, elections have been marred by issues such as rigging, violence, voter suppression. While efforts have been made to improve the system, challenges persist, raising concerns about the credibility of the process. One significant step towards electoral reform was the introduction of the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, designed to curb overvoting and enhance transparency. This technology marked an improvement in voter accreditation, reducing incidents of multiple voting and impersonation. However, questions remain about its implementation, reliability, and whether it has truly restored public confidence in the system. Despite these advancements, voter apathy remains a major concern, with many Nigerians still skeptical about whether their votes truly count. The influence of money in politics, allegations of result manipulation, and the role of electoral institutions continue to shape discussions about the future of Nigeria's democracy. With these challenges in mind, the question remains: despite technological advancement like BVAS, what more needs to be done to ensure that elections in Nigeria are truly free, fair, credible, and acceptable? To help us unpack these issues, we are joined by Professor Abubakar Umar Kari, the Dean of Student Affairs and an Associate Professor of Sociology at the University of Abuja. With a PhD in Political Sociology, he specializes in electoral behavior and democratic governance. He is also a consistent public affairs analyst, bringing deep understanding of Nigeria's electoral challenges, the potential pathways to reform. Professor Kari, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Chief Ezenwa Nwagwu. Good morning, listeners.
Thank you for obliging us and agreeing to take out time out of your busy schedule.
It's a pleasure.
This morning. Nigeria's electoral system has been criticized for being elite-driven rather than citizen-focused. How can we restructure this system to ensure elections serve the people rather than the political elites?
Yeah, this is what the Americans call the $34 question, and Nigerians call the $1 million question, because it's a packed full question. It is at the core of the democratic process itself, because we cannot have true democracy without credible, free, fair, and acceptable election. And this is almost an ideal, but is a necessary ideal, is something that every country that purports to be a democracy should have and should practice. It is at the core of democracy itself, I repeat, and it is something that all the stakeholders, all the key players, and even the not so key players in the democratic process must participate. So the answer lies in true participation of all the stakeholders, and by participation, I don't mean simply exercising franchise, but also all the relevant stakeholders should do their job, should perform their assigned responsibilities as prescribed to them, and as effectively and as efficiently as possible. What I'm talking here is that the EMB, the Election Management Body, must perform to the satisfaction of the Nigerian voters and the Nigerian electorate as a whole. Political parties should live true to their billing as mobilizers of the people, should also educate their members and those they are fielding to also play the game according to the rules. Then the voters must be educated, and not only educated, they should also appreciate the fact that in a democracy, the more the merrier. The more people participate, the better the system, the healthier the system, and they must participate meaningfully. And therefore, High Chief, that question is a very loaded one.
I think it's a healthy way to start the conversation this morning. First, a lot of people are concerned about court-determined outcomes, but the judiciary is it's also part of the electoral process, that judicial oversight. And there's a debate around whether we should conclude all electoral disputes before swearing in and all that. Where do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, for me, it would be better if that is possible. But I don't know how the election timetable would be in order to allow for that. It would have been neater and better if all election disputes are disposed of up to the highest court, whether a Supreme Court or Court of Appeal, as the case may be. But my worry is that possible, given the tight nature of the election timetable,
of the calendar?
Yes, and that is just part of the story. The major story is that research has shown that sometimes between 30 and 45% of elections, election outcomes are disputed, are taken to court. So is it realistic for all the plethora of election grievances to be addressed before May 29 or June 12, as the case may be? I don't know. So that is the worry, but it would have been better for me. The best cure for the so-called court-dependent democracy is for election adjudication to be concluded before swearing in. But perhaps this is one area that the stakeholders will have to sit down and look at how possible, how implemented.
But I worry sometimes also when the judiciary is there. If you don't have problems, the judiciary doesn't come in.
Yes.
So the politicians are litigation happy folks. They like going to court for every other thing, and then we turn back again and then begin to say, our outcomes are court determined, when people are the ones who eventually the omission or commission of the political parties. Why is it difficult to unpack this conversation in a way that helps people understand?
There are two dimensions to the issue. One of them is the point that you have just raised. If elections are not organized neatly, they are organized in a way that they will be challenged, then it is inevitable that elections will be challenged, and we cannot blame the judiciary for that. But that is just one part of the story. The other one, which is more interesting for me, borders on the behavior and attitudes of the average Nigerian politician and his own understanding of the role of the judiciary. The judiciary has been mythified, and because the average Nigerian politician, sorry to say, does not always play by the rule, does not only always play the game by the rule. He sees in the judiciary an opportunity. So there is this perception that the Nigerian judiciary has become the last resort of desperate politicians who are ready to do anything. After all, there are perceived corrupt judges who will simply give them what
black
they
market
to
judgments
get at the poor. So the first issue to be tackled for me, very importantly, is this widespread and deep-seated perception that the judiciary or election petition is some kind of Russian roulette. As one former CGN, Mustafa said it, in a case, Buhari versus Umar Kari. He said, unfortunately, the Nigerian politicians think or believe that the judiciary or election petition is some kind of game of chance or Russian roulette, even where they don't have grounds for going to court. Notwithstanding the patently frivolous nature of election petition, they still believe that somehow they can have their way, they may compromise the whatever. So it has to do perhaps with the way the judiciary itself conducts itself. And this is another topic. Studies on adjudication of election petition has shown, and sorry to say, my PhD thesis was partly like that, that there have been a lot of problems, multidimensional problems in the way the judiciary adjudicate election petition. There is no consistency in judicial pronouncement. There used to be, now that has been partly cured, undue tardiness, slowness in the adjudication process itself. But even more importantly, there is this belief that election petitions are not necessarily decided based on facts and law, that politics, more than any other thing, is the major deciding factor. So as long as that perception is there, as long as the average Nigerian contestant or politician believes that it is possible that he could cut corners in the court, we will continue to have this deluge of election petition.
So it takes us to trust.
Yes.
Public trust in institutions. I think ours is chronic. We don't just
yes.
We don't just trust.
That's why I say it's deep-seated and widespread.
Yes. So
distrust.
And I know that persistently is low. What practical steps can be taken to rebuild confidence in electoral process beyond just free, fair elections?
Well, but Eze, the major thing is free fair election, because as another CGN also said, he said the best way to address the issue of election petition is to prevent election petition in the first place.
Which is what I said.
Yes.
Where I started.
Yes, is to ensure that there is even no basis for the election petition. Because if
you are litigation happy, like you also said,
yes,
we go to court just because sometimes it's even just to say
let us waste our time. Yes, it's a game of So I think we should place that solution at the doorstep of the judiciary. If the judiciary proves Messrs wrong, that and does its job as diligently and as efficiently and as fairly as possible, I think it would be a disincentive to these so-called litigation happy politicians. But if the judiciary still continues to conduct itself as if it is truly a refuge for scoundrel, then we'll continue to have this. So I think the major thing has to do with the way election petition trials are conducted, the way the election petitions are adjudicated. If the judiciary is doing it very dispassionately, they do not kowtow to either the ruling party, or they are not seen to have been easily compromised, because it is perception. Perception can change if behavior and attitude change. If the judiciary begin to make judicial pronouncements on election petition that do not encourage litigation happiness, I think the people who are litigation happy will begin to think twice. But if the judiciary continue to conduct itself as if election petition is a game of chance, anything can happen, then we'll continue to have this problem.
Yeah, before I get to the next question, then we've seen episodic interventions, because sometimes the tendency always is that if you rule against the ruling party, then you are independent.
Yeah,
yes,
that's also perception.
Yeah. So once we saw Zamfara, for instance, in 2019.
Yes.
When
everything was reversed,
and then it went to the opposition.
Yes.
The people who didn't virtually win election eventually becoming.
Yes.
We saw it in the current Senator Natasha
and
Bayelsa and the rest of them.
Yes.
Why is those interventions not able to strengthen the belief that you have a judiciary that can also stand?
Probably because they come, they are few and far between. There is no consistency in such so-called independent judgment. If we will be getting them frequently, perhaps it will change the perception. But then also, our political culture, unfortunately, encourages deep skepticism and unnecessary suspicion and distrust. Even where you see things that are correct, where some institutions, officials and individuals do very well, people still continue to be skeptical. People still begin to attribute it to some very funny reasons. So I think frequency of these kind of things,
the kind of interventions,
yes,
that we talk about.
but if they are few and far between, they will not amount to much.
Okay, so I'll take you. You are a professor of political sociology. There are big concerns about political patronage, and the reward system that prefers loyalty to competence. In terms of governance and changing the dynamics of the kind of outcomes that we are seeing in governance? What do you think needs to happen to rethink that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that governance should be a mix of both competence and reward. Politicians, you have to be realistic, must reward those who have helped them to get there. But that shouldn't be at the expense of service to the people. And I believe that even within the reward system, you can also find competence. I think in most cases, what happens is that the reward or patronage is defined in a very clear way, where you begin to reward those that are clearly, or those who clearly do not have what it takes to add value to governance. So elected officials and political parties, I think, is a responsibility for them to try as much as possible to blend competence with patronage. Maybe 70-30 proportion, 60-40, and so on. And then there are certain responsibilities that are very, very key. They are germane, that should only go for those who are competent.
Technocrats, they call them.
Well, whatever you call them. But I still maintain that these technocrats are also homo politicos. They are also parts of the political process, and they also participate. But you see, the major thing is that there is this tendency to reward the wrong people. There is even this tendency to interest you to know that many political office holders, particularly at the governor's level, they are even afraid of competent people. They don't want to share the limelight with those
who can spark.
Yes, they think. So they prefer mediocres. So part of the mediocrity entrenched in our political system is the tendency of some officials to suffer too much inferiority complex and to suspect people who are competent, who are brilliant, who can do the job. And we can find these people everywhere, in all the professions. They are there begging to be picked to add value to governance. But because those who matter are pathologically scared of them, or even averse to having things with them, so they waste away.
So somebody is talking about maybe negative godfatherism,
yes,
and how that affects what you are talking about.
Yes.
So is there any legislative response or something that can, that can filter that kind of this negative godfatherism that trumps competence over?
Well, it may, but legislation has its own limitations. The executive have wide discretionary powers, which I'm not sure can be affected by legislation, unless if you go for a whole-scale constitutional amendment and so on and so forth. Those who hold political office, executive office, mostly reserve the right to appoint those who they want to work with. So, for me, it is more of a personal thing and attitudinal thing than a legislative thing. The legislature may attempt to do, but they have a limit. The legislature cannot tell the executive, for instance, that the Minister of Finance must possess so, whatever too much. They still have to have that. They still have that latitude,
that flexibility
of discretion. So, correct exercise of discretion by those who hold political office, I think, is the major antidote. And unfortunately, these are the people that we have already accused sometimes of being averse to competence and brilliance.
We'll be going on a short break, but before we go, do you think that, because it's democracy, sometimes I also, as you was talking, I was just thinking, it's democracy. Should it be just about competence? Because sometimes
that's why I say
yes,
it should be a blend of competence and reward. Many competent people are even apathetic. They are political, or they are reluctant to even come out and to show themselves, while others take risk. They are all over the place during the electioneering process, and they clearly participate in bringing the government, and they should be rewarded. So it is not all about simply picking the competent people.
Yes, because even that is even a nuanced conversation.
Yes.
Because when you say competence,
competence is an abstract concept.
Yes,
that very, very inflexible. It can be defined.
because if you are a very good political talk, you are competent. It's still Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of this live program by sharing your comments via the social media platform on X at PAACA.ng with hashtag at Electoral Reform Hour, and you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via PAACA Cap, and our WhatsApp number 0816 8083 424. Our phone lines will be open soon. Don't go anywhere. You're still listening to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We've been having an insightful conversation with Professor Abubakar Umar Kari on fixing the electoral system. Before the break, we examined some of the major challenges facing our elections despite recent reforms. Now, let's pick up from where we stopped. Kari, despite efforts by INEC and civil society, turnouts during elections have remained low. I think we may have a systemic weakness in, Nigeria's civic education approach that has made it difficult, in spite of all the other things that I know affects voter turnout. What do you think can be done to fix these gaps?
Well, I think we first and foremost have to correctly diagnose the problem. It's like an illness. For you to cure an ailment, you have to properly diagnose it and then apply the right medication, so to say. At the root of voter apathy are factors. Some of them are institutional, some are attitudinal, some has to do with the general global trend, because it is also a global thing to an extent. It's not necessarily a Nigerian thing. But I think in Nigeria, the major factors affecting voter turnout, one of the major factors has to do with the performance or non-performance of those on the saddle. There is widespread discontentment by the people that over and again they have elected people who have almost immediately after abandoned them. So they feel, what the heck? What is the use of coming to exercise your franchise if at the end of the day you only contribute in voting somebody who governs in his own interest and not your own interest? So there is this perception, and I think to an extent it is true that those on the saddle at the various levels, federal, state, local government, and so on, they have not performed to the expectation of voters. And this has had a concomitant effect of affecting voters' enthusiasm. So it is.
We will interrogate that further. You can now join the conversation by calling 0915 0910 482 0915 0910 483. You can also leave your questions and comments for us on WhatsApp at 0816 8083424 and on X at PAACA.ng and Facebook at PAACA. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll closely link to that point. I think in the same point, but at a broader scope, is that.
Hello, good morning. Hello. Good morning. Good to have you this morning. Who am I on to? Okay, Abubakar, you can make your comments or ask your questions.
Yeah, good morning, Abubakar. My namesake. Sure, thank you so much, thank you. Okay, it's a pleasure, thank you.
Thank you, Abu. Let's give the chance to others. Thank you very much. You want to respond
so
to?
I think he, to an extent,
he thinks your own job is to be giving recommendation.
I've been giving recommendation for the past 15, 20 years. So it is not the issue of even Justice West panel gave very beautiful recommendations. They have not been implemented. So it is not an issue of recommendation. But the larger point I was trying to make is that, you see, the ordinary person operates on the basis of incentives and disincentives. Many of them have come to the conclusion that democracy has not paid them well. Democracy has not brought...
Kari, I want to ask you, in 2003, we had maybe above 60% turnout, and we were not having elections,
yes,
in the true sense of it.
Yes.
Today, because of introduction of technology, you've been able to deal with voter identification theft in a way that has reduced turnout in terms of percentages. Isn't that a positive?
No, it's a positive. I was coming to that. Between 2003, I think up to 2003, but particularly 2007 elections. Honestly speaking, the figures were not reliable because they are mostly concocted figures. The results were simply cooked and so on, and there are so many interesting things. The same election, a president who's a presidential candidate who score 1 million votes in a particular state. The total number of the National Assembly election will not be more than 50,000 and so on. So, what used to happen, as far as I'm concerned, was simply cooking of votes. Votes were being cooked, and then electoral reform started 2011, but particularly 2014 up to now, and so on. So the figures that we see now are the best approximation of reality, real voting strength. So that's why I do not fall into the temptation of making comparison with the total figures of 2003 and 2007, because as far as I'm concerned, they are not reliable. And no matter how dishonest and pessimistic someone is, you have to admit that a lot of wonderful things have happened in our electoral process, particularly introduction of modern technology. Introduction of technology in the electoral process. It has led to so many things. And now, for instance, good way of election misconduct has almost stopped.
Yes.
Yes. For instance, you cannot just go and cut away all the votes, whatever, and go and declare. It is no longer possible. And even Togri, to an extent, has been addressed.
Yes, because the Togri was a product of the reason for the
Togri was a strategy.
Yes.
It was
because the ballot has been thumbprinted somewhere.
Yes.
So you needed to cut the one that was, so that you can supplant it with.
So all those things are not possible. So actually, these are positive. So what we need is to consolidate. And actually that is the solution, is to consolidate and also introduce more. I read that there was a complaint in 2023. The issues may be resolved in 2027. So every election throws up its own problems, which should be addressed in the next election. And I think that should be the major focus of stakeholders. And thank God, since 2002, amendments to
the Electoral Act,
yes, have always reflected this. Whenever there is a general either general election or off-cycle election, all the problems that are identified are harvested, and then stakeholders sit down and try to provide solution to them. So we still need more of this electoral reform. And since electoral reform is a process, it's not a destination, you don't achieve them overnight. So what we continue to do is to continue to do the reform.
Consistently, you were talking about Togri and all of those issues. Consistently, there has been conversation about establishment of Electoral Offenses Commission, and to deal with other issues, other electoral misconduct and the rest of them. And then, but the Electoral Act currently talks about INEC, prosecuting. And INEC does not have prosecutorial powers. So what are your thoughts on the electoral? Do you think it will serve? For one, as an organization, we've always thought that strengthen the institutions that do this rather than, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I used to be, until recently, a very strong advocate of a brand new outfit, an institution that should tackle elections, malfeasance, and so on and so forth. Because over the years, those that have been caught violating electoral laws have not been prosecuted. But then I believe we shouldn't completely believe that INEC cannot do it. Why not try INEC first? Why not strengthen INEC with lawyers and prosecutors and so on, and maybe have equip its legal department, and if law now grants it prosecutorial powers, let's try 1 or 2 elections and see. If it works out.
So INEC was supposed to have worked with the Nigerian Bar Association.
Yes.
To take on these electoral offenders at pro bono.
Okay,
pro bono level.
But I don't like this pro bono. Why not just have?
No, that's what I'm saying. Yes. So, but that was like some kind of quick fix.
Yes.
Because of the challenge that the problem has, but the bigger problem for electoral offenses is first that to answer whether crimes committed during election
are a criminal offense or a civil offense,
or that it is an election crime. Because the Police Act says that the police should enforce all laws.
Yes.
So if it has that power to enforce all laws, why do we have to separate electoral
because the police
offenses?
are not doing. So the solution lies in either going back to fix the Police Act or insist the police must prosecute. But the police have not been doing so, and I doubt if the police have the manpower to do so, because normally after every general elections there will be so many electoral offenses and electoral offenders begging for prosecution, and the police are not doing it.
So they bring the files to INEC, they prepare files and bring it to INEC to prosecute.
So rather than INEC to be dependent,
because that's what they hinge on the Electoral Act.
Okay, so have they been doing that?
No, not to the best of my knowledge.
So I think the best thing really is for INEC to be strengthened with a very strong and robust legal department. It should have the resources to hire brilliant lawyers to prosecute, since the law already permits it, and then to go and cure that problem with the Police Act. Maybe to make it a concurrent thing. The police can do, INEC also can do, so that somebody does not go on appeal and quash, and get the judgment quashed, and so on and so forth. So, and INEC must not depend on pro bono services. No, it should have the manpower and the resources to seriously go about prosecuting electoral offenders.
It's not always easy to have you, to drag you to a program like this. So I will use the opportunity to veer into conversations around some of the topical conversations. Women, this whole thing about mandated quotas for women, and I know you are involved in a lot of work with IRI and the rest of them in terms of. So my argument always is that the issue of women involvement starts with the political parties. What can we do to get the parties to create these special quotas for women candidates so that they can? It is when they are offered as candidates that the people can elect them. If they are not offered as candidates by the parties, they cannot be elected.
Yeah, it's a paradox because it's a solution and a problem at the same time. Ordinarily, it shouldn't be any problem if our political parties have been up and doing, and they have not been. Our political parties have largely remained elitist. They have largely remained under the beck and call of few persons, the so-called godfathers, individuals or official godfathers like the presidency and the government houses and so on. These are the people and individuals and offices that control political parties. So as long as our parties are not grassroots based, our parties are not people based, the tragedy of our party system is that very few of our political parties, if any, actually consciously go out to even convince people to join them. And so my fear is that if you go to the National Assembly and make a law of giving proportion to women or to youths or to whoever, you will only be strengthening these godfathers. You will only be strengthening those who have been controlling these parties. So the major challenge is to make our parties truly democratic. Yes. Is to make them go out there, canvass for people, go on serious membership drive, and so on and so forth. But now, the women I see making noise in the political parties are elitist women who are simply positioning themselves to benefit from the laws that are being envisaged. And that will not be a big plus to our democratic process. It will not deepen our democracy. So the major challenge is our parties. Our parties really need to live up to the billings of being true political parties. They should go for membership drive all over the place, including the campuses. NEPU and AG and MPC used to be in the campuses, and everywhere people are paying for membership card. In fact, the parties were surviving based on process for membership cards and so on and so forth. While now our parties are being controlled by the godfathers, by the state house and the government houses and so on. And these are the people who decide everything. So it's a good thing to want to promote women participation and so on. But I hope we are simply not falling into the trap of those who have entrapped our political parties and put them in their pockets.
I agree with you. If you had the power to, make a radical change or reform to Nigeria's electoral and governance system that will create long-term stability, what would that be and why?
That's a very loaded one. There are so many things I would do.
You've come for a job interview already. Nigerians are listening, so who knows?
Yes. So I think the major thing is to first and foremost take the bull by the horn. implement the Justice West reform recommendations in total, particularly the remaining things that have not been done. I believe they can help, particularly the area that making the election management body to be truly independent. If you don't make it truly independent, by way of appointing its officials and so on, and by freeing it from the control of the ruling party, because it is still largely controlled by the ruling party. It has achieved a financial independence to an extent. It now gets its fund from the first line charge, but politically it is still dependent. So the most radical thing to do.
Is there anywhere where they are free? Well, if you are nominated by the president, because I think this argument has gone on for too long. The president nominates, but the Council of States also advises, and then it goes to, first there is even screening by the security agencies,
and then the arrangement.
The correct arrangement.
And that's what I'm saying.
And then we go to National Assembly, and then the National Assembly is a multi-party National Assembly now.
Supposedly so.
Well, that's
the National Assembly I saw is where opposition are more pro-ruling government than even members of the government itself. So the issue is what the West Panel report is saying is to substantially free INEC from the presidency, so to say, by diversifying the appointing power, spreading it
to NJC.
Yes,
and NJC is a creation of the Constitution in Section 14 or so of the Constitution. It's INEC is also a commission. Another commission overseeing.
I believe in civil society will be part of it.
Yeah, there are many models, yes, which we can
so because
use.
For me, our democracy will not prosper, will not endure as long as elections are more or less decided before election day, and that is what is happening now.
So share your final thoughts. This will be a good place for us to wrap up the program, but just in a few minutes.
Yeah, democracy is about participation. There are two or three, among the cardinal principles of democracy, 2 or 3 stand out. The first one is choice. We cannot have a democracy where the people's choice are restricted or unduly abridged. So it's very, very important for us to do something about choice, so that the ordinary people will reserve the right to choose who they want, and to choose the kind of government they want, to choose the kind of people they want, and to choose the kind of programs and policies they want government to do for them. That is one. And second is participation. I've mentioned earlier on, in a democracy, the more the merrier. We measure the health and robustness of democracy by how many people participate. And by participation, I don't actually mean coming out to vote. No. Political participation involves a range of events, including membership of political parties. More people should join political parties. More people should join civil society. More people should be involved in holding those in power accountable.
Excellent place to draw the curtain on today's program. Very special thanks to our guest, Professor Abubakar Umar Kari, for joining us on the program today. To our dear listener, thank you for joining us on this edition of the Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PAACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Our engineers today have been on duty, have been Leonard Silvanos, ICT Jamila Abdullahi, and studio manager Priska. Opera producer is Orin and Dohemba and Joy Ubi. Supervisor is Huseina Akila MNI. And My facilitating crew members are Grace and Jeremiah Nkume. After this program, if you have any questions, you can reach out via text or WhatsApp on 081-68083424. We especially appreciate the contributions of our founders, MacArthur Foundation. We apologize for your inability to get through if you wanted to call us today, but the conversation continues next week, Thursday, same time, same station. My name is Ezenwa Nwagwu, your anchor, saying have a good day. Bye for now.